Welcome back to Think Fast. Today we're talking about the Airbnb's profits. Suchita, what do you have to say about their
Yes,
profits? Is it a
of
good profit?
course.
Is it a bad profit? Is there any profits? Is there no profit? Is there air in the BNB or
What
is
is
there
wrong with
no air
you?
in the BNB?
Oh my God, Varun, you're not allowed to take pee breaks because you basically morph into I don't know what. You morph into an Oompa Loompa when you come back to the show. But guys, I'm very excited about this story because I am a shareholder in Airbnb, and and I genuinely really love the company. I think what they've been able to build is so special, and people say Meta is once in a lifetime. I think companies like Airbnb are more closer
I
to it,
agree.
and
I agree.
we've discussed it a bunch of times in the past. But why don't you give us a quick blow by blow of the noteworthy numbers, and then we will give our tippany on what makes this company special.
So in Q4, Airbnb's revenue grew by 24% year on year. It's at 1.9 billion. It's basically it's grown because of
Revenue, bro,
growth in.
not even top line revenue. Shit.
Well,
No,
सोचो
that's what I'm
मतलब
saying.
क्या.
Insane. Psh.
This is what
Yeah.
happens when a CEO doesn't expense his houses and stays in Airbnbs himself.
Yes, and in fact puts his house on Airbnb
Exactly. It's so cool.
to
Imagine
make
you went
more
to a house
money.
and their CEO is there. I'm like, ये क्या सही है? But yeah, so it's grown because of an uptick in stays and experiences. In the curated selection of tours and events is really kind of added to that as well. Gross nights booked in Q4 22 for more than a week. Wow, that's like crazy. People have booked for more than a week on in general. Is that what I'm reading here? Is my eyes deceiving
Yes,
me?
that's exactly what you're reading here.
Yeah. Yes. It's
40% higher than in Q4 2019.
yes. I'm not able to read right now. I know what's happening.
Acha, I will just read the rest out.
Yes.
The total listings on Airbnb grew to 6.6 million. So they added close to a million active listings, on a year-on-year basis. And of course, I think the most noteworthy number, which you alluded to earlier, also is they generated 1.9 billion of net income. Its first profitable full year, which is obviously quite a turnaround from 2021 when the company lost 352 million odd dollars. So let me ask you this, man. We've discussed Airbnb so many times. We've spoken
Hmm.
about how they've made the most, like, contrary to popular belief kind of bets, and it seems to have really paid off for this company. What do you think makes this company special?
I feel what makes it special is that they have a certain philosophy and a way of functioning which they make sure they keep in mind no matter what they do. And it's look at this, right? Just pre-pandemic they were going to go for the IPO. The world shuts down. They had to obviously take certain measures to kind of bring themselves to a point, but they didn't, like, the company didn't suddenly become this, okay, we need to survive, shadow of itself. It stuck to its guns of how it functioned. And it also kind of gives that to the people, and especially with companies like Airbnb. Think of an Uber and Airbnb, right? You are people kind of renting out something which they have, to be a part of it, but just the kind of perks they give their hosts, the way they function with consumers, how they really work towards correcting things which they see are problems consumers face. Phil, that core philosophy goes so deep across every single thing that they do. I think it starts on the top for sure, but I think it's just generally how the company functions. I would put that at the core of it, because end of the day, you run a business at a by not moving away from what you stand for, no matter what happens.
Hmm.
You end up getting this amount of brand love from both the people who are your partners and your consumers, and
Yeah.
shareholders. I feel that's a core. I mean, that's for me has always been the core part of Airbnb. Nobody's been able to do this balancing act better than they have.
Yeah. I know you've taken the more like emotional spin on all things
Always,
Airbnb, but
always.
always speaks from the heart, man, speaks from the heart. For me, what Airbnb secret sauce really is their supply, right? I
Hmm.
think there are such few companies. Can you just imagine how difficult it is to build something today that is a marketplace and still
Yeah,
has differentiated supply? And the only
yeah.
other company that comes to my head that's been able to make a go of this has been like Etsy,
Hmm.
and then maybe to some extent marketplaces, quote unquote, like only flans, only
Hmm.
fans,
Only
sorry.
fans. Only plans is a different kind of product.
Yes, for people who like eating dessert. Or you know what I mean? Like, or like maybe
Yeah,
like Patreon to some extent. But
yeah,
it's just so rare to find companies that have struck a balance in between being an aggregator, having unique supply, and actually still very much having their differentiator being, for all practical purposes, competitive pricing for consumers. And I know we discussed this earlier, but if you look at one bet that they made in recent times where they went all in on brand marketing versus performance. So Airbnb
mm,
actually grew their spends on PR and brand to a majority
yeah,
of their overall marketing pie. And I know we discussed this in a previous episode, but for those of you who hadn't heard that, stuff like that actually can only work in the case of Airbnb because they have that unique supply, right? When you
yeah,
like if I had to show you if I had to show you a picture of a igloo in the middle of Alaska, and
mm,
you wouldn't say it's Hilton hotels. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's so Airbnb.
yeah,
And I think one small thing that I'll add over here is from a product perspective. I love that they haven't deviated from the basic things. Like when you
mm,
open their app or their web, it's not like they have some fucking AI angel falling from the sky or any of that other
yeah.
rubbish. They've kept it very, very clean, simple, to the point, and really focused on reviews and recommendations, highlighting their more unique, differentiated stays, and not screwed around too much. In fact, their worst years were when they were trying to become something that they were
Yeah.
never meant to be in the first place. Like
The
remember when they were
content
doing
business and all that
flights?
stuff. They were doing content business also very deeply into
Yeah,
that. They were getting into the whole Airbnb studios.
they launched a magazine, and I don't know what
Yeah.
else.
Interesting you said AI, right? Because Brian Chesky, when this whole thing's coming out, he actually said that AI is going to play a pivotal role in their business. It's kind of like connecting, in his words, the, our search problem isn't really a search problem, it's a consumer inventory matching problem. So how do you kind of connect people to it? I think that's also looking at AI in the right way, right? You're using it to
Hmm.
solve a very specific problem. You're not making it like the broader feature of how everything functions. And that's how,
Yeah.
at least like I've always believed AI needs to be used like a very core focused task. And then you learn and you kind of generate stuff through that. So again, like it shows that they're building it the right way. This is one other point is that they're fully remote. They
Hmm.
decided to be fully remote a while back, and the headcount is
Oh.
down about 5% from 2019. So that could also have added into just like the numbers, but I guess you can be a little leaner when you're functioning fully remote as well.
Yeah, no, but I think obviously two things that have worked in their favor has been, apart from differentiated supply, just use cases. Like
Mm,
Airbnb's sweet spot use cases. So, for example, the data point that you just read out, right? The most profitable segment is someone who books for a week.
mm,
And that has obviously grown 40%. But it's awesome how through this differentiated supply, they found these really interesting niches that may
yeah,
not be very apparent to you and me, and let's be honest, they're very like European and American niche use cases.
yeah.
Like, let me go work out of a mountain lodge for like 1 week. If you go and
But
tell your
it's
boss that in
happening a
India.
lot more in India as well. We're actually seeing that happen more and more, especially through the pandemic. It's not as much now as people are going back to offices, but this is surge of people who want to kind of work in different spots, and I don't think that's
Hmm.
going down as much. But it's definitely become a habit. A lot of people have gotten into through the pandemic. People who generally don't want to come and let's move to a place and come to an office every day. And if
Hmm.
you're a very like focus, I think a tech worker, especially someone in tech, someone in consulting, someone who's let's say in some aspects of the finance segment as well, they're really using this as the opportunity, and a lot of them end up staying in Airbnbs.
Interesting. Airbnb in India, what's your take on that? Because I think apart from Goa, it doesn't seem like they found a perfect match.
So they do have a lot of options. I also know a lot of people who use them, but what's happened in India is I think you also have very specialized ones that have come out. Right? You look at the Saffron Stays, look at some of the
Yeah.
others. A lot of them have taken over this, your local tourism spaces with someone's, guest house, someone's space like that. So I feel that's really been the thing is that a lot of people have taken the Airbnb model but done smaller scaled versions of that in different categories. And I
Hmm.
guess also Oyo also has been, but Oyo is a very different category of things, and you
Yeah,
can't
I was
count them
going to
into
say
this.
Oyo technically is like Airbnb's Indian counterpart, but
Yeah, but also
not
like
the
a very
same.
different way, right? They just take over hotels more than taking over like being that whole house experience or the bungalow experience. So it's that breakup of things.
Hmm.
I'm guessing that played into it in India, although it's still there. I mean, I've used an Airbnb in India and it still worked.
Hmm.
And Jalasmi has a important point here. The Indians trust hotels more than Airbnbs. They think of it from a
Yes.
safety standpoint. So that's a very important point.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you look at the general Indian story, nothing that isn't a managed marketplace has necessarily scaled. Like all the examples that you gave, whether it's Saffron Stays or any of these other guys, they're all managed marketplaces. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, you
yeah,
know, it's a Saffron Stay property. You know that there's
yeah,
some amount of like staff, like Vista Stays, all these other guys.
yeah.
Airbnb obviously doesn't take any accountability for any of that.
Yeah, yeah, and that the reason why they all do that is in India you got to make sure the quality is a certain way, so at least you will come back for that, and that's why people tend to go back for a Saffron Stays or Isprava and Lohano, for instance,
Yeah.
and a few others, and I feel that that's something which if they have to kind of get into India, we are a very, I mean, we are spoiled for choice in the hospitality segment in India. Let's be honest, there's no
Yes.
country which I feel is like gives you the level of service from a hospitality standpoint that
Dude,
India does at
India
all
is top
levels.
notch. I concur.
So the bare bones Airbnb model, I guess it only works for people who are like not working from just like want to work out of Goa, stuff like that. But
Hmm. Hmm.
again, that long term 1 month, I know people took like a 1 month thing, but again they chose other aggregators who had bungalows or like apartments you could kind of rent. So, I mean, maybe in India they got to think of it differently. The other question is, do they need to? I mean, is this a
Not at
growth
all.
place for them? They have enough places where they're
Zilch.
growing.
Nada. In fact, what's interesting is, and not that I have data to back it, but I think Indians are more likely to use Airbnbs in Paris than they are
Yeah,
in Bombay. You
100%.
know,
I've used an Airbnb in
uh,
other countries many
yeah.
times, and it's been a great experience. I agree. Maybe we don't look at them